Cora does phenomenally is it can create a unique experience for every customer that comes to the site. And that could be hundreds of different experiences. And it's built in a way that you don't have to change your site at all. You just put a script in the header, and Cora will take it from there, and it will augment the copy. It'll change the buttons. It'll create the perfect experience to increase conversions for your parents, your kids, whoever comes
Wow.
to that site. And
That's
it becomes
amazing.
this living, breathing amoeba.
There's a version of the AI story that goes like this. AI can write code. Now anyone can build software. The barriers to entry are completely gone. That's true so far as it goes. But it also drowns out an even bigger and more important narrative that literally everything we know about building products, from ideation and discovery to the business models behind software, is being upended. My guest today is Eric Schneider. He has been living at the bleeding edge of this disruption, first as the co-founder of an AI-accelerated venture studio, and now as the co-founder of Cora, a company that's not just using AI to build its software, but is embedding intelligence into the interface itself. Our conversation covers why it is existential for product managers to embrace AI, how traditional static software interfaces are becoming obsolete, what it looks like for modern teams to use AI to drive entire business functions, and how the use of sub-agents can help you build software fast and at a quality level that was previously unimaginable. What Eric is building forces us to ask some big, uncomfortable questions. If AI can change how products are built, how they behave, and the business models behind them, does anything about product development actually stay the same? That's what we're here to talk about today. Let's dive in. Hey, Eric, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to jumping in. I was thinking about a good place to start with you, and you are by far, I would say, the most creative person that I've seen working in this space. Some of the ideas that you come up with and things that you're building are just so much fun. We'll get into some of those specifics later, but I thought a great place to start would be unpacking this connection between human creativity and AI. Again, some of the stuff you come up with is just so much fun. So talk to me about what's something fundamental about the human creative process that you feel like AI has helped unlock for you?
For sure. This I think is an interesting subject because people have opinions across the board about it. But the way I look at it, I guess going back, I went to school for art and I was a digital artist. And at that time, there was a lot of pushback if digital art was real art. And I would say that AI is kind of going into that realm as well. Where I see AI as a medium or a tool to help create more, and then also to brainstorm. I mean, the best thing you can do is talk to someone else to brainstorm, and us kind of. I live in my imagination. The best thing for me is to have someone to talk to about my imagination and pull out new ideas and new concepts, and try to figure out what the best approach to getting there is.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point, and I feel like it is something that sometimes gets missed a little bit by people who haven't spent as much time working with AI, and they sort of think of it as this question answer machine. Like I'll put in a question, AI will give me an answer, and I like to encourage people to really think of AI as like another person that you can bounce ideas off of. You can prompt the AI to give you feedback in certain directions or ask you questions to, again, kind of ping pong things back and forth. And there is something just magical sometimes in just having this partner that can sit there 24/7 and just bounce these things back and forth. And what gets unlocked in that conversation can be really, really transformational.
For sure. And I would even say there's a certain point in AI creation and AI development where you do have that partner and you're working on it and you're kind of going through and brainstorming. But when you get to the execution step, it switches. And the way I see myself often is as the creative director. We've got the vision, we got the idea and the concept, and the AI is asking me questions and trying to understand, okay, do I do this, this, and this? Or we need to tweak it here, we need to tweak that there. And then the direction kind of comes out as well. So it's not just blindly saying, Claude, I want to build a synthesizer, and then Claude goes and builds the synthesizer. There's a lot more
Yeah.
exploration and experimentation
Yeah,
code.
that's a really good point. I feel that too, where like at the early stages of an idea, you're using AI as this very collaborative kind of thought partner, looking at ideas from multiple angles, like we said, using it to bounce things back and forth, and then eventually you get to where you're kind of just feeling it, right? Like you've come to a point where you're like, all right, I see the direction, I see where we want to go now, and you sort of shift gears into this creative director where the AI can really help you just go execute, go build the thing now that you've arrived at that vision. And speaking of building things, I think this is a nice segue into where I wanted to begin the kind of higher level portion of our discussion around this your backstory. So you had this future proof studio concept that you can talk about, and as I understand it, this was really about leveraging AI, like we've talked about, to quickly ideate and create new software offerings. Talk to me about some of the backstory behind Future Proof Studio and how that's now evolved to where you are now.
Yeah, for sure. Future Proof was born out of the idea of just that rapid prototyping. But with the realization that instead of going out talking to potential users, finding a problem, and then developing a solution, and then 3 months having that solution going back and iterating on it, we could collapse that iteration cycle completely down, and really focus on going out, meeting as many people as we can, finding hard problems. Once we find those hard problems, creating a very simple solution, and iterating with the potential customers over a week or two. And we would explore these concepts, and then we had a really strict go, no go. And after about 4 weeks of work with a customer, if they weren't ready to buy, we just cut ties, done, move on to the next idea.
Yeah.
And really trying to test the market. And there are ideas that I had that I was convinced were going to be amazing. And because of the rapid cycles we were able to do with AI, we determined like, no, like users don't want this, and we were able to
Yeah.
make that decision really fast.
That's like such an important point too, because you think a lot as you get in and start building stuff with AI, you just feel so like empowered, and you're like, oh my gosh, all the amazing things that I could build and all these different ideas that I could pursue. And the reality is that like building good products and useful software is about way more than just writing code, right? It's about finding the
Correct.
right customers, solving the right problems, and this ability to quickly iterate through things and find not just what does work, but what doesn't work is super helpful as well. We're doing that at my day job at One Vision, where I lead our product and engineering team, and we're able to just so much more quickly bring in customer feedback, quickly ideate, come up with a plan, go into Figma, mock it up, and put something in front of users immediately just to get that feedback so much more rapidly than we were before. And it's not just, again, about finding what does work, but a lot of times when you put that in front of a user, you very quickly identify like, oh, we're actually thinking about this incorrectly.
For sure. And one thing we even started testing, and we found another project before we could fully test it, was the idea to not build anything until a customer has agreed to pay for the product.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'd say, okay, the trial starts in 2 weeks. Are you willing to pay? And they'd sign up. And then that's when you could go and say, well, AI takes me a week to build something that I can get in front of them. And if we know like that small little bit of what that perfect golden pathway is for that customer, you can go build that overnight, and
Yeah.
then take it to the customer. You have someone paying, and then you can iterate on it from there.
Yeah. Yeah, zoom in on that for me, because I did want to ask about like how the kind of business model of this. So I'm interested on this show in not just exploring like the building aspect of AI, but like how is this impacting business models overall? So in the early days of Future Proof, how were you going about identifying who these people even were that you were going to get on a call with in the first place? And then at what point in that cycle were you starting to talk about the commercial side, the dollars and cents of things?
Yeah. So my role at Future Proof was products through and through, and especially in early stage companies and in venture studios. I think you're only as powerful as the conversations that you have. and identifying the right problems as well. So my goal was to go out and talk to as many people as possible. Literally fill up my calendar with like anyone. I didn't really care,
Hmm.
and try to have conversations and see. And the conversations would sometimes just be networking conversations, and other times they would lead into real problems that these groups of people were having, and then I could start to pull that thread, and say, okay, well, I found this area. Like one idea we had was onboarding new patients for therapy offices.
Hmm.
And I found that thread, and then I started going out and trying to meet with more therapists and more business people that were involved in therapy businesses, and then start pulling on that thread even further until you try, find that true problem and potential solution, and then you can, start iterating from there.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to imagine that you were probably transcribing all of these calls and using AI to help synthesize takeaways. Talk to me a little bit about what role AI played in that specific process. Because again, I think this is something that gets a little bit overlooked. People think about AI as this either like question answer machine, or there's a lot of attention being paid to using AI to develop code. But like, I'm a product guy as well, and I use it all the time to help, take meeting transcripts, synthesize takeaways, et cetera. So talk to me about the role AI played in that research and development process.
Yeah, for me, the most powerful thing, I remember it's like October 2024. Like, really, I consider that the early days, a little bit,
Yeah,
which is wild because it's like only a year
it
and a
is
half
wild.
ago. But um, the most powerful thing for a product manager at that point was the ability to take all of that information, everything from emails to transcripts to whatever, and put it into a Claude project, and then synthesize from that context. Because at the very in maybe I'm taking a weird view on it, and you can disagree with me on this, but at the very like minimum, a product manager's job is to synthesize as much data as possible, find the through line, and create a plan. And I realized that like a product manager, while we try to not have our biases in what we bring and the decisions that we make, we do bring biases,
Hmm.
because you listen to a call and you're in early product discovery and the customer says one thing and your brain's inevitably going to go with that one thing, and then you're going to go and meet with your design team. You're going to have a meeting about that project, and someone's going to get excited, and now you're off on a tangent from the customer's experience. So the idea early on was, well, I can take all this information and I can bring an unbiased subject in that can look at it all and find the true thread and the true problem, not the problem I perceive to be the problem,
Hmm.
and it's less assumptive at that point.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there I want to respond to. So number one, yes, agree with all of that. I actually posted on LinkedIn just yesterday or the day before about this idea that like product really sits at the intersect. So there's this whole saying of like AI won't replace you, but somebody using AI will. And like, I'm not a huge fan of like these big generalizations like that. I think that's way too broad. I get the spirit of it, but I did post that like I think for product roles that actually is true. And my very specific reason for saying that is product sits at the intersection of two things: large amounts of unstructured customer feedback in the form of meeting transcripts, emails, Slack threads, what have you, and the code base. And AI is exceptionally good at working with both of those things. So you have all these threads coming in unstructured form. And now with AI as a tool for you as a product person, you can do exactly what you were talking about, parse through all of that, find the through line, and then turn around immediately and point the AI at the code base and say, okay, now go look at the code base and tell me how we would solve this, and put together that
Exactly.
detailed sort of technical requirement or proposed plan for an engineer to review. And so I think that, when you start to really use AI in that way as a product person, you very quickly see that there's just, quite frankly, no way, in my opinion, that a product person is going to be able to keep up without that in the future. So that's number one. I agree with all that. And then this idea of using AI as a sort of counterbalance to our own biases, I think is a really really key point. The only thing I would push back on a little bit is like you have to be cognizant of that, because if you're not careful, AI can act as like a giant confirmation bias machine, right? AI is very good at picking up on what you're looking for. And if you give it any sort of hint that you're like, hey, this is the idea that I'm after, and I'm looking for evidence in this call that supports this preconceived notion of mine, if you give it any hint in that direction, it's going to take it and just run with it. So, what I like to do is very deliberately tell the AI, give me the bull and the bear case for this idea. Like, here's my idea, here's my hypothesis. Look at it like a scientist, right? Like, here was my hypothesis coming into the call. Look for the evidence in the call that supports or and refutes this hypothesis. So I think if used correctly, it can do exactly what you're describing.
For sure. And I think it's a split in context as well, because I'll often take like the user feedback portion, emails, all that kind of content, and put it into a project. And that's my unbiased project. I create another project that's just pure, like this talk creativity, and try to get that going. But kind of to double click on something you said earlier, like really the PM becomes the orchestrator of where the data flows and the information between the AIs. Heck, I even think like I remember one of my first PM jobs, having to sit and work with the designer and annotate screens and make sure the dev team had everything they needed to know what needed to go where, with all the flows and all the time it took to do that. And then being able to take AI and say like, look, here's what we got, here's the designs, build these documents for us, and it
Yep.
saves you so much time to focus on the important thing, which is really talking to the customers and getting feedback and making sure everything's being orchestrated correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. And applying that human judgment and intuition, right? Because like there's no getting around the fact that there's going to be more ideas and more directions to go than you have the bandwidth and resources to pursue. And so ultimately, like the product person still plays a really critical role in kind of
For sure.
filtering, steering, guiding, all of that.
Well, and
Um,
especially filtering within your team,
yeah,
because while
yeah,
you have an AI on your team, you still have your CEO that has assumptions. You have, your sales guy that has assumptions. Everyone in the team has assumptions. And that was always
exactly.
my goal. And when I was on product teams, was to say, this is my assumption, but
Yeah,
here's what the data is saying, and really
yeah,
try to break that apart.
yeah.
So
Identify and flag those assumptions. Super important. So let's shift gears a little bit. Through this process of Future Proof Studio, you guys identified an opportunity, and that's what you're working on now. And as I understand it, you've actually identified an opportunity that felt big enough that you've sort of disbanded Future Proof, and you're now pursuing this idea in Cora. So give the listeners a little bit of background and context on what Cora is, and then the high level sort of backstory about how the opportunity was identified and how you made the decision to move in that direction.
for sure, yeah, Cora. So Cora at its high level is an AI that lives on your website. It analyzes all the interactions that happen on that site, and finds where people get stuck. Then it suggests optimization to that site, and then follows through by actually making those changes for you. So it's like having a whole UI UX product team that lives in your site 24/7, optimizing for sales, conversions, lead gen, kind of whatever goal your website is building. We kind of like to say that everything on this stack is optimized to bring people to your website, but we've settled for a 3% conversion. And
Hmm.
the rule of thumb is to increase sales, you increase top of funnel, you do more SEO, you do more marketing. Well, what if we could optimize the site to increase that 3% up by even 1%? And the impact that would have for businesses, for people that come to that site. I mean, it's wild. You hear 3%, but when you think about it, that's 100 people coming to your site and 97 people leaving,
Hmm.
and only three people converting. That's just mind blowing. You spend
Yeah.
all that money for 100 people to come in, and 97% of those people leave.
Well, and I think a lot of people would be probably happy to get 3%. Like there's a lot of people getting
Yeah,
less,
yeah,
getting less than that today. So
yeah.
definitely like that's I think a really good way to look at it. Um, how did you guys like make that decision? Obviously there were some strong signals there. but I'm sure
Mhm.
you also had like other cool stuff that you were pursuing at Future Proof. And I would imagine it probably wasn't like an easy decision to say, we're going to go all in here. Talk to me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, so future proof, part of future proof was to think about building businesses that just got us on base, with the idea that like, look, like if we create five businesses that sell for 10 million, it's better than creating one business that could be a unicorn or fail, you know? And the businesses we did create were great, but we found Cora, and Cora kind of was that what we thought was the home run, and we wanted to put all our effort into that. So how we stumbled upon Cora, is how all my ideas start. Daydreaming, honestly, um, and asking kind of hard questions. You know, the question I asked myself while stuck in traffic on vacation was, what's the future of user interfaces as it pertains to AI? I was pretty frustrated at the time, and still am, that all these AI software sets, all the user interfaces look the same. If you're not a designer, like they're coming out looking, they're all purple, with emojis, with really bad enterprise dashboard feel. And I just wasn't ready to settle for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it also came from a more introspective look at, well, we are training a lot of the companies out there that like your Replets and your Lovables and other tools, they're training AI to be more human. And humans are inherently flawed. And the only reason why we have code in its existence is because we've abstracted machine code for humans to be able to write software,
Mm.
which is inherently flawed as well, in my opinion. So why um, lean into making software more human or AI more human, and instead make AI more computer? And so that question kind of came up, and the iteration that kind of went into it was, well, what if we gave micro intelligence to components, everyday components, your button, your checkbox, your form fills, that kind of stuff, and how would the software and the interface respond as a computer and not as a human, but a computer's understanding of how humans use computers. Um, and that flip was scary. Actually, it was
Yeah.
nuts. I witnessed the first prototype, these buttons and these forms talking to each other and conversing and asking each other how the human was using their interface, and found where that human was getting stuck. And then, like every kind of mad scientist here, I gave them the ability to fix themselves, and gave them DNA and a set of beliefs and understanding. And as they were conversing with each other, they had the great idea to add a reset button on the form fill, and add a delete button. And I let them do that. And it was just magnificent watching this happen, and realizing that if we gave, instead of saying that, to write a user interface, we have to write, use ShadCN and write in this language, and it has to look like this. It's flipped, and it says, okay, I want to achieve this. It's up to those components now to define themselves
Mm.
and self order to create the most optimal system as a computer would create it, not as a human would. And so we created that, and it was nuts. It was mind
Oh,
blowing.
that's fascinating. Yeah, this
Yeah.
this reminds me of like, so things. A couple of things come to mind. Number one, again, going to my day job here as a director of product at a company called One Vision. Actually, had my first call this week with a customer who was like, "Hey, I want to throw my OpenClaw AI agent in your software that you guys provide me, but I'd like it to have like its own seat." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I hadn't even thought about that." And so that immediately prompted like, well, we need to think about, what sort of permissions, what's our liability if somebody does throw an AI agent in our software and it, deletes a bunch of data or starts emailing customers inadvertently. So there's all these different like implications that start to come about when you start thinking about the fact that we're rapidly entering a world where interfaces aren't just going to be designed for humans, but they're going to be designed for AI. And in fact, I was just on, we use heavy Stripe users at work, and I was just on Stripe's website the other day, and I forget where I saw, but somewhere on their site, I stumbled across this thing that said like LLM question mark, and it was like a hyperlink, and I was like, what is that? So I clicked on it, and it just opened up this page of like Markdown, basically like a giant Markdown file that was
Oh,
clearly
amazing.
there. Yeah, it was clearly there for like AI agents that were navigating Stripe's website and looking for things. So yeah, like this point about kind of fundamentally rethinking the role of interfaces in a world where it's not just humans interacting with them, but AI, which I think is maybe a little bit different than what you're saying, because you're talking about embedding the intelligence into the interface itself, which is super interesting. And there's a ton we
Well,
could unpack there.
I would say it's a roadmap,
Yep.
is what we're kind of talking about here. And right now, creating optimal experiences for customers is where Cora is. The idea is that, why have eight personas or six personas? As a PM, the more personas you have, the more complex it gets. So if you can create an average of the best personas, then you can create the best experience for those averages. Um, we don't believe in that. We believe in creating every persona that comes to the website. Some of our customers have over 15 personas. Well, with these personas and understanding how they interact with the site, how do you make the best experience for them? In the past, you'd create multiple different landing pages and funnel them through the landing pages. What Cora does phenomenally is it can create a unique experience for every customer that comes to the site. And that could be hundreds of different experiences. And it's built in a way that you don't have to change your site at all. You just put a script in the header, and Cora will take it from there, and it will augment the copy. It'll change the buttons. It'll create the perfect experience to increase conversions for your parents, your kids, whoever comes
Wow.
to that site. And it
That's amazing.
becomes this living, breathing amoeba. And the beauty is that that experience could be an agentic experience. And that's also where we're moving, is making sure that our customers' websites now are able to be a roadmap so the agents know how to interact with them.
Yeah.
And so we've created that protocol and that system to actually help them do that.
That's amazing, because I've heard many conversations about us moving towards a world where interfaces become much more dynamic, and this idea of kind of a static interface that every user of a given software is forced to adapt to becomes something that like our kids look at as quaint and archaic. And the reality is that like the software that they're interfacing with is sort of molding and adapting on the fly to, maybe who they are, who their role is, what sort of feedback and preferences they give to the software. And it sounds like you guys are making that future a reality today, which is amazing. I'd love to zoom in and actually talk about how you're using AI also as a tool. So you and I have talked, I think you've got a lot of AI involved, for example, in kind of automating your customer onboarding process, for example. Talk to me about some of the ways that you're actually using AI, not just as a core part of the product, but in the operation and the experience that your customers have in engaging with the business.
For sure. I think the biggest thing is we always look within the business and say, like, what, if we need to buy something or want to buy something, can we build it ourselves? And if we need to hire an employee, can an AI do it for us? And it's so far been successful for us, but even down to content writing, design, brand, all that kind of stuff is all done by agents for us. It doesn't mean that we are just letting the agents make decisions for themselves. I've created a really tight knit focus so that the agents know what they're doing and when. But a lot of that is automated. Even down, like to your point, one thing I'm building today is once a customer signs, we do an evaluation period basically where we give them a document that shows, we have enough data. This is what we see the impact being. What does that look like? And literally from the moment that they put Cora on their site, AI takes the reins. And it's partially Cora because Cora is its own LLM.
Mm-hmm.
but also these agents. So we analyze the data that we get, and Cora creates a big document basically that identifies areas that could be improved. And then I've built a whole presentation agent that makes these really beautiful interactive presentations. And it takes that, ingests it, creates that presentation that is like, I really, it's beautiful. I'm shocked at how beautiful it is because this
Yeah,
whole course spurred from bad user interfaces, you know.
yeah, yeah. I've
Um,
had a really hard time finding AI tools that make good presentations.
yes,
Can you share anything specifically about the sort of stack or the tools that you're using to make that particular
yeah.
aspect happen?
Um, I use it's a kind of a funnel. So the first is taking the data and structuring it correctly. So we have a data analysis agent that literally comes through like 30 million lines of interactions and finds patterns and creates understanding. And we have a very specific output that it creates from that. And then we send that over to our presentation agent that uses a series of other agents. There's a brand guidelines agent, what we call a whimsy injector agent. So the whimsy injector is just built to find moments of joy and put those in there, and just like it's those little things in the experience that you're like, oh wow, like that's incredible, like they thought of that, that's incredible, you know. So whimsy injector does that. We have a UI designer as well, kind of oversees the whole experience, and then our front end developer. And we created this template that I have, that's 10 slides. This is what we expect it to look like. And we have our brand guidelines. This is what it should be. And the front end agent takes that, builds out the templated deck, and then we have the brand guideline and the whimsy injector go back over it and say, okay, does this fit everything? Does this compare? And then pushes it live.
Amazing.
Um, and then we're even putting in the ability for a customer to punch a button right there, and their contract just appear, ready to go, and they can sign and get onboarded and everything from there. The big I see a lot of conversations on LinkedIn about people doing what we're doing, and there's you're either on one side you're all in or you're not, I think. And the big worry constantly is security. And we've actually built agents for security as well, knowing that that is an issue. So our CTO, while he also reviews everything, we do security checks constantly every week
Yeah.
of our entire system and audit it and find, okay, there's an issue here, there might be an issue here, and then we work on fixing those. So we're not just uneducated vibe coders just ripping
Yeah.
it. We really try to be methodical about it, but to build
Yeah.
a business that can actually scale. So
Yeah. Yeah. Security is a big one. And, my response to that is there's nothing in principle stopping a human engineer from building really like unsecure software, right? Like, so it's just AI is just a tool. And if it's applied thoughtfully and you're thinking about security and you're maintaining awareness about it, I think you're going to be fine. There are AI tools that can audit for security. And also, ideally, you have real technical engineers as part of your company who are able to look at things from that perspective as well. So I think there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, but that's no different than humans building software. Is my kind
for
of
sure.
whole point about that. So yeah, I'd
I
love to
was a
shift.
junior engineer once, and I built
Yeah.
really bad,
Yeah,
unsecure
exactly,
software.
exactly. So let's shift gears and get a little hands on. I'd love to spend the remainder of our time here today looking at your process and having you show us how you build and what your process and tools sort of look like. So talk to me first about what kind of tools you're mainly using today. What's your main stack for vibe coding and building software, and then we'll jump in and take a look at some of what you're doing.
For sure, for sure. I really take a product manager approach, so I want to be sure that everything I build has some sort of a rec or PRD that I build in tangent with some sort of AI system. So for work, we use a tool called BrainGrid. I'll first write a very detailed kind of technical requirement document. The software needs to do this, the user needs to
Mm-hmm.
do that, and really get those clear and then put it into BrainGrid. And BrainGrid's great about looking at our code base and then analyzing what I have, building out clear milestones, epics, and then tasks associated with those. Because we're dealing with such a large code base as well, it'll identify the exact files that need to be edited, which I think is the problem a lot of times with people that don't have that specificity. Because AI is really good at being like, oh, I'll edit this file, but I'll go edit this file too, you know, and this really creates those bounds. And then we use either Warp or Cursor. Warp's a great terminal tool, and then Cursor as well is great. And honestly, don't even use the Cursor agent. We're 100% Claude code. And our metric for success is if we run through our weekly credits on Claude Code, and we often will run through our credits multiple times a day, and have to wait, which is great because we call it our touching grass moment. It's our we grind, and then we go outside and go for a walk and talk about what's next, and then keep going.
Yeah, the credit usage acts as a useful sort of break on the system and keeps you from completely burning yourself out. I've had similar experiences. So let's dive in and do some screen sharing if you're able to. I'd love to see if there was a feature that we could talk about for Cora or some sort of idea that we could quickly go through as a real example and just to kind of illustrate what your overall process looks like.
So this is an example. So this is what I would do for a small feature. It's a feature that I'm working on right now. And basically I'm going through and writing exactly what the feature needs to look like for the agent that's going to build it. This is a feature on our homepage for onboarding. And this is also what I'll do for personal projects. So we do use BrainGrid for the big stuff. But I also have a project manager agent within Cursor that does a lot of the breakdown of the feature and the task for me. So you can see here, it's really just like laying it out and being as detailed as possible. We're building a new customer onboarding route. So I tell them what route it's going to be. It contains the form, a form that's similar in look and feel to this route right here. And I need to use our brand guardian agent to make sure it aligns with our visual identity. The form is, and then exactly what it does. The form is a new way customers will onboard into our tool, and it should contain the following information.
Yep.
And I put it all out here, what's required, what's not. And then I even have I've been doing this lately and it's been really working. I wanted to add copy that says something like, if you put your credit card in now, we'll give you a 20% off on your first month. And you can do card or ACH, but it won't be charged till trial period. And Claude's been really good at taking that with the context of everything else on our website and making it into the perfect sounding experience.
Like optimizing that copy, not just taking it word for word, but putting it in context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I add information note, somewhere in this form, we need to state that this is a trial where the first 2 weeks are free, etc. This system should have a rudimentary dashboard. So part of it is that we want our sales team to be able to say, here's the customer, create a unique link and send it. And instead of making a crazy dashboard, we just want it to be rudimentary, very simple inputs. And then on form submit, this is what happens. And then I'll literally take this and copy and paste it. And I have another example here. This is, and I'll show you actually the output for this one. We just built a way to put Cora on the site before it would take 3 days. We built a way to do it in about 90 seconds. And needed a way to get all that information into the API without them having to log in and do dashboards and all that kind of stuff. So very similar to this one up here, and kind of just putting those requirements down. I think that's the biggest key. I could go to Claude and say, hey, I need to build a form for customer onboarding. Will you build it for me? Instead we do this, and
it'll be glad to go build that for you, right?
Yeah.
It's just who knows what you're going to get back. Yeah.
Yeah. And,
so what I love about this though is how it just illustrates how you can use you're using this tool. Hey, Note. Very simple, but this is the work, right? This is the part of the process where you've really got to sit down and kind of think through. And give it good direction, right? You hear this
Yep.
discussion all the time of like, hey, you know, we don't hear the term as much anymore, but like prompt engineering when AI first came
Hmm.
out was like the big term. And you know, this it's just really nothing more than just being thoughtful about the guidance
For
that you're
sure.
giving the AI.
For sure. And what's not in here, and I'll usually do it when I actually write it, is I tell it to ask me questions, and that really becomes that relationship that we were talking about before of me as the creative director and the AI as kind of writing. And so it'll go through and say, well, what do you think about this? Should we do that? And I can kind of answer those. And one of the cool things about this prompt, I'll show you what the output looked like, is it's a form for Google Tags Manager. Well, if you don't have Google Tags Manager, there's options for Wix or Squarespace or all these other frameworks here. And I told it in here that I'm going to provide screenshots for each of the guides, and I need to just like placeholder it because I don't know yet what the steps are for those sites. And when I told it to ask me questions, it responded and said, I know how to put it on these sites. Do you want me just to do it for you? And it made
Yeah.
guides for all of those. So I can kind of show you what
Amazing.
the output looked like.
Yeah, that process, by the way, of telling the AI to ask you questions is something I've talked about on previous episodes, and I think it is one of the simplest, most powerful things that you can do to get more out of AI is flip the script, you know, and have the
Mhm.
AI interview you because it will think of questions that you just didn't even consider.
For sure. And here you can see, I mean, it really crushed that.
Yeah.
It's all on brand. If we go to our homepage, you can kind of see what our brand looks like.
Yeah.
But it took that and made it really
It's
perfect.
beautiful.
I just had to adjust some font sizes. I mean, even down to little animations on the buttons and stuff. And it's because it knows my brand. I have the brand guardian in and all that information.
Yeah, I was
Um,
going to ask about that. So in the prompt, you mentioned this brand guardian agent. For people who aren't as familiar about using multiple sub agents, you've alluded to this multiple times now. Share a little bit about in practice, like what does that look like to set that up?
yeah, for sure. I'll show you a cursor here. I have Claude already here. Really, you just go agents here, and I have a ton of them. So we have the Whimsy Injector, Design Visual Storyteller, Marketing Content, UI Designer, Brand Guardians here.
Hmm.
So we'd click on that and view that agent. And you can see like all the different things that we've told it to do.
Yep.
Its description, what the system prompts look like, what the brand foundational document. So it actually creates a foundational document and updates it every time we adjust the brand. And then the success criteria. And so when you want to create an agent here, just do agents, and you say create new agent, and you say project or personal. I like to do personal, so they're everywhere. And you just say generate with Claude, and what we'll do is there's this great guy, Sitars, who made agency agents, and I just pick out of this list, you know, I need a UX architect, for example. And I will literally just copy that raw file, all this information, and then go straight into here and just paste it in there. And then you just hit
Got it.
enter, and it builds it out for you. It's pretty
And
pretty
then I would
simple.
imagine like if you want to iterate on that, like take that template that you grabbed from agency agents as a starting point, but then maybe you want to make it your own in some way. You could obviously go in and just edit the raw file, or I would
For
imagine
sure.
you can also have Claude just go back and forth with Claude code and say, hey, use this as a starting point, but let's modify it to meet my needs. And you could be as prescriptive as you wanted to in terms of that
For
prompting
sure.
process as well.
Yeah, and I honestly find they're great out of the box. But your previous guest, Matt Bernier, he makes all his own,
Yeah.
and they're phenomenal. And I forked those as well. But it's really simple. Like you just say continue, what model you want, and then like color, and now that agent's built, and now it's a part of your system.
Got it.
And it's just like
The
phenomenal.
yeah, and then the process of invoking that agent, if you just want to do it
Hmm.
in a chat,
Yeah.
share what that looks like.
Yeah, so we'll say, here, let's just do this. So I already have this prompt built. So I would take this, go in here and say, using this prompt, and the brand guardian agent, whimsy injector, and UI designer build a customer onboarding form. Ask me questions along the way, and use any other agents at your disposal.
So it is as simple as and this is a great takeaway for people. Like using these agents is not complicated, right? Like
No,
you showed the process of creating them, and then when you want to invoke them, you just tell it, just like you would a human. You know, if you were managing a direct report, hey, use these tools when you do this job. You can just do it in conversation right there in context, and that's all Claude Code needs to take it and run with it.
exactly. And you have to tell it to invoke them, because otherwise they'll just like, Claude's very good at being the smartest person in the room. And
Yeah.
you really need to like tell him, no, go ahead and do it this way.
All right, cool. So we've got Claude Code kind of chewing on this. Are there any other tips that you might give somebody who's just getting into agents and like, because in my experience, and so part of this question is self-interest, right? Like this is a area that I want to get into more. I'll be honest. I use Claude Code very effectively. I don't have a ton of agents set up, and so I think it's easy to go down the path of just like, oh, I just go in and ask Claude Code to build stuff. So talk about, like, as you're getting into agents, maybe some good places to start, or any other power tips that you have where agents really help take your process from up to the next level.
For sure, yeah. The biggest thing with agents is just trying them. I was also a Power Claude Code user and still am, obviously, but hesitant about agents, didn't think that they would help my flow. But they have been the biggest unlock. Heck, I even have agents that aren't even writing code that I'm using to get content right, to brainstorm, to build proposals, to do kind of everything. And that's been the biggest unlock. I think the best thing to know, though, when you think about agents, is they're not an autonomous system. They're not, another instance of Claude Code. They are just literally a better prompt
Yeah.
for the job you're trying to achieve. And as a PM, we're kind of deadly because we know what roles we need to get the job done. And if you can break that down and attribute it back, then you can say, okay, I need a UI designer, I need a data analyst, and I need a UX, or I need a software architect, so that I can, one, create the right UI, pull in the right data, and then make sure that the feature that I'm building fits in with the architecture of the software I've already built.
Yeah.
And those agents can work together and then create that system, as opposed to you just saying, hey, Claude, build me this feature, here's what it would look like.
Yeah.
And it literally is such a big unlock. It's transformed how I work. I mean, those presentations, I can I'll show you the presentations even that it creates. Which one do we want? I like this one. All of this has been done by agents for us. So I'll just do.
Yeah, I just noticed right away how consistent everything is with the branding. It all looks,
Yeah.
Right on point.
So this is one of our vision decks, and I'll scroll through it fast because it's not proprietary, but all of this was done by these agents. Like, you hover over and you can see the little animations, like the scroll. We have animations that flow through. And
I
it
love
literally is like, it's one of the best decks I've ever produced, I think. And as an entrepreneur, you spend hours building decks, and it
Man, that looks
executed it
beautiful. Yeah,
flawlessly.
that looks beautiful. So this definitely got me inspired. I'm gonna, I can already my evening is being planned out as we speak, of getting in and building some agents, and this stuff is just so much fun. Like this is just giving me all sorts of ideas here. Let's jump back to Claude Code, because it looked like it had gone through your initial prompt there, and as instructed, it's come back to you with some questions here.
Yeah. So you'll basically go through and answer these, and usually he'll even come back and say, "Hey, I have more." But part of this flow is we want to tell you approximately how much it costs. We're going to do exact dollar amounts. For Stripe integration, should customers be able to pay by ACH? Yep, we want both. For the sales dashboard, we're going to do individual logins. And then the link domain, where should the unique customer live? We're going to do new customer ID. So now it has all that information. And it's going to go back and it's going to look and like re-look at the prompt. And then sometimes it will come back and say, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah, there it goes. For email notifications on form submit, which notification service? We're just going to do Google Sheets only, and then we'll just do it manually because, embedding with SendGrid and stuff is a lot more work.
Right.
Do you want existing URLs for these documents? No, we got to create those. Should this Next.js or separate system? We're going to do separate API app. Do you want unique links to expire after a certain time period? We'll do 30 days. So a lot of this is like the conversation you'd have with your senior developer. That's like, okay, I see the rec. I'm gone through it. Like, here, I just need to clarify these things,
Exactly.
And like,
exactly.
We're not, again, like, we're not like doing, like in the early days of Replit and Lovable, you just like prompt it once and it would produce this thing. Like, we're really like, to me, this is very iterative and very real to being on a real team.
And I think these questions were a perfect illustration of the point I made earlier, how the AI will ask you questions that you may not have considered. Like, you might have enough experience, or if you had enough time or energy, you might preemptively think of all of those questions that it asked you and include those in your initial prompt. Like, oh, we need ACH, and we need this, and we need that, and all through the list. That is, theoretically possible. But the reality is, like, with this workflow, as long as you give it enough to get started, I have found that I'm super confident in Claude to come back and ask me the right questions to identify gaps that I might have missed. So what I've learned is that there is a point of diminishing returns on your initial prompt where you can spend all this time like filling out all these details and trying to think through every edge case, when in reality, if you just give Claude Code enough to get started, it'll come back with these questions and allow you to very quickly fill in the gaps that you might have missed.
For sure. And you'll even see here, like, it asked me the API route for the backend build. And I just don't have that question right now, or that answer. So I'm just going to tell it, I need to ask my software architect before I can answer you. Please continue forward. And when we get to that point, ask me again.
Yeah.
So now that gives me time and it gets an answer, and now I can just go.
So now it's going to go through and chew on this. Very cool. So, all right. So we've talked about the initial planning process. You've got your initial prompt plugged in here. We've covered agents, which, again, super cool. Look forward to jumping into that. And now Claude is going to go chew on this. Once it builds an initial version, there's obviously the human testing element where you're just going to look at things yourself and see, did it build the thing that I want? But do you have any agents set up for review after the fact? We talked about security, but maybe usability, UI. Like, talk to me about your process once Claude has developed an initial version.
Yeah, so you can see right now it's actually pulling that Brain Guardian and the Whimsy Injector and that UI designer in here. But we built our own QA department, basically, with different tasks, and it'll pull up Playwright and it'll analyze everything for us and do all those checks, security checks, everything. And it's taught, our system prompts are taught to iterate on that until it's complete. So we should have a complete picture of it before it comes to us to do the human test. And of course, human tests, you always have to tweak something.
Yeah.
But we do have a system that wasn't built by me. It was built by my CTO that'll run through it all from a code perspective and make sure it fits and everything like that. I have the Brain Guardian and the UI designer run through everything again just to make sure that it's on brand. Because sometimes it'll get creative and try to put in a color that's just not our color, you
Got
know,
it.
and
Got
get
it.
done.
That process that you talked about for going through, looking at security and so forth, I would imagine that's all happening in Claude Code as well.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So, are
Yeah.
those dedicated agents that your partner has built? Talk to me a little bit in just a little bit more detail about how that. What does that process actually look like in practice?
Yeah, so they're dedicated agents that he's built, and they're evoked within the system prompt of Cursor. So Cursor knows that every time that when it finishes something, it needs to pull this group of people with this prompt and run it through, and then it'll build a report for us to see and say it's checked these boxes, not these boxes. Do you want me to go and fit these boxes? Like, can I go back through?
Got it.
But that's really more on our API side. On the front end side, a lot of this is just UI.
Yeah, yeah, I
When we're
gotcha.
building a presentation deck, we don't really need that kind of stuff. But
And so is your process is kind of like you said you're focused on product. So are you doing most or maybe all of this initial kind of development, and then once you're happy, you're sending it over to another member of your team, your CTO or somebody else to then run it through their process? Is that happening more in parallel? Maybe it varies from feature to feature. Talk to me about like I think the collaboration aspect is something
mm-hmm.
I'm interested in, because it's one thing to sit and vibe code a project that you alone are working on. It's another thing entirely when you start introducing other people into the mix. So talk to me about how you guys have structured your processes to allow multiple people to collaborate on a project like this.
For sure, it really is kind of your traditional PM approach. He and I will work and iterate on things, and then I go and I build the rec, and make sure it's just completely bulletproof. If it's on Brain Grid, I'll go through, build it there, review it, tweak it, and that's all me. And then he'll take it and build it. But there's also kind of a collaboration approach too, because I'm not a traditional engineer. I'm definitely, I think, more of that front end developer, and he's more of the full stack developer. So he'll go and build the API endpoints and build all that system and the security and the architecture and all that. This happened yesterday. He built that whole structure, and then when it was up to me to build that form, he sent it over to me and say, "Hey, here's the endpoint. You go build the form on the front end." And then I can
Got
work
it.
on that brand, the design, and all that aspect, and collaborate that way. But I'm pretty much true PM role,
Yeah.
building those recs and PRDs and making sure they're
Yeah.
perfect.
Awesome. That's super cool.
You know,
Well, we're starting to bump up against our time here, and I want to make sure we leave some time for fun. So again, I alluded to this at the very beginning. You are like one of the most creative people that I've met in the space. You and my previous guest, Matt, who you alluded to, co-founded the letsvibe.org group here in the Denver area, which is an amazing group of people. And I come to those meetings, and you're always showing these like fun, creative projects that you're doing that really get me inspired to think about things in a different way. Is there anything that you've been working on lately that you can show us that might illustrate, what you're up to on the more fun, maybe artistic side of things?
for sure. Yeah, I'll share. I'll give backstory. I love music, all different types of music. Been really getting into opera. Also really love kind of the heavier screamo kind of stuff, like deathcore and things. And a
Opera
few
and
years,
deathcore. I love that.
yeah,
That
a few years
juxtaposition.
ago at the Summer Olympics, they had their opening ceremony and they had a metal band and an opera singer at the same time. And I was like, oh, that's an incredible genre. Couldn't find it. I've been getting into Suno for creating music. And I kind of had this idea. I was like, well, what if I create my own opera? Because I really like soaring arias and big grand orchestras and organ feels and that kind of stuff. And I started iterating on that. I was like, well, what if I like made it a little bit more cyberpunky and pulled in this screamo aspect, and then that led to the idea, well, what if I made visuals for it? So this is the visual side of it. I won't play the songs because they're very long. Each of them are like 7 minutes long. But the opera is called Into the Void, and it is about the experience of being a vibe coder, sitting in front of your computer and trying to figure out what you're going to prompt it, kind of being sucked into the white abyss of the empty text box. And then
Yeah.
once you get pulled in, the relationship that you begin to develop with the AI, and then all the iterations you go through. But
Very
I
cool.
was trying to figure out a creative way to show that, so I built this website. Yeah. So this website is kind of a '90s hacker kind of feel. Is kind of the vibe. So like anything, if you get to a dark room, you got to turn the light on. And then we need to turn our computer monitor on as well. So we'll turn that on. And it's going to initialize through the BIOS here. And you can kind of see just like kind of some fun system stuff about the rock opera here.
I love this. That's beautiful. Also, by the way, I don't want to leave the audience totally hanging. Is there a way you can give us a sampling of that music? Or at worst, I'll include it as a link in the show description for people who are watching.
Yeah, they can go here and I'll show you how you can play a few of the songs.
Okay, perfect.
And my goal here is to iterate on this. So like they can go here and hit help and it'll show all the commands. And you can launch blank canvas and prompt me. Prompt me, I think, is the best one right now. And it really showcases our two, Quinn and La Morrigan. La Morrigan's our soprano. Quinn is our founder, who's the screamo voice. But I kind of went a little deep on this and made a fan page for the opera. In Netscape Navigator GeoCities mode. So this is La
Oh, this is giving me
Morrigan's
flashbacks,
forever.
man. Yeah, this is crazy.
Down to like about this site, I made fake ads to Hallucinate, Search the Web, or a version of it. I love, my favorite is this one, Stack Overlord, the original, the only, the increasingly irrelevant. For 20 years, we held the keys to every answer you needed us, and it says we see you using AI now. We see everything. Quinn's cold pizza, because there's this whole thing about being late up at night, and Quinn is sitting there at the computer eating cold pizza because that's what we do. Yeah, Quinn's cold pizza is still warm enough. I love it.
Amazing.
And then cast bios for each one. So, and then we have the cast members. Really focus on making them really, really punny. So like the sound designer is read only, the lighting is dark mode. I don't know if you used to listen to Car Talk back in the day, but at the end of Car
Yeah.
Talk, they would do really punny things. Rick cursively, Skip Tracer, and then our orchestra. Let's see, the cello is low bandwidth, bass guitar Barry core dump, lead guitar riff ram drive. Chuck Buffer is the rhythm guitar. I love that one. Crash Override is the drums, keyboard, cyborg pressed keys. And then, because I love Parks and Rec, we have Duke Silver coming in on saxophone, which is Ron Swanson's alter ego.
And
all
is
our
this
scene
site
breakdowns.
live? Do you have this hosted?
Yeah,
And
so you can go to
was
the Void Opera right here.
the Void Opera? Okay.
Yeah. For sale.
Thevoidopera.com.
Yeah. No, here, I'll send you the link after.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, this gets really deep, but let's do.
These
I even
graphics,
put
by the
in.
way, are like really. I'm looking for the right word, but they're very. They're not like anything that I've seen generated with AI before. You know, like a lot of
Mhm.
AI stuff you see online all has the feel. You look at it and you instantly know like somebody used AI to build this. What
Yeah,
was your process for the visual design here? Because it's really striking.
I appreciate it. I found source images and then worked with Nano Banana to get the right shape and size of
Yep.
everything. and then loaded it in, and then really worked on the look and feel of the prompts, and making sure the prompts were the right, aesthetic, and really making sure it came out. And honestly, Netscape Navigator came out better than I could have ever designed. I'm just shocked with how good that is. And
yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it looks right on point.
I made Ask Steve, which is an Ask Jeeves alternative. Steve,
and you might get an answer.
Yeah, so you say, what's for lunch? And there's like 30 canned responses to it. The policy is no. You can say, how many cars are in the world? That's what they all ask. Steve answers remain unchanged, no. And you can say yes. Steve appreciates your optimism, no. You say no. Both Steves say no. So it's like a search engine that never answers your questions.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, just trying to make it
and
fun.
I think totally. This is the kind of thing where like what I love when I see these kinds of things that you're working on is it kind of pushes me, and I think a lot of people are probably like me, where AI is all this kind of there's a lot of doomer talk. There's also a lot of crazy optimism about this utopian future and where is all this going to go, and it's very, very overwhelming. And it's helpful just to see that hey, we can also just have some fun with this, right?
Exactly.
Just go in and play around. It's okay to ask all those big important questions. Those questions all need to be asked, but AI can also be a tool just to go in and just
For sure.
have some fun and get creative.
Well, and that's where I've always been bad at writing software. Now I can write something like this and bring it to life, and have fun with it. And before I feel like something like this to build would have taken me months to build. And
yeah, you
honestly,
probably never would have done it because you just couldn't justify the time investment.
I mean, this took me 2 hours on Wednesday to build.
Amazing.
So
amazing.
And all great systems, before you leave the room, always make sure
you shut it down. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our conversation, Eric. This has been so much fun. Really appreciate you carving some time out of your day and sharing some of what you have going on. If anyone is watching or listening to this and wants to connect with you to learn more about what you're up to, what would be the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn's always best. Reach out and say you saw me on the podcast, and always happy to help. Brainstorm, go have a cup of coffee. Trying to get the Denver walk and talk up as a meeting style. So if you want to go for a walk, always down for that as well.
Awesome. Love that. Yeah, we spend way too much time at our computers, so I think that's a good format to introduce. Well, Eric, thanks again for joining me. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jason.
All right, take care.